All right, that was wonderful. Go kids, you guys are dismissed, so you can head to the door. One of the ways we prove that we love you guys is you're the only ones with AC this weekend, so enjoy that. Kids are awesome. Yeah, Haley's there in the back for you. Before we get started, kind of a couple little things. Again, appreciate your grace to hang out with us in here and try something different this weekend. If you're new and you have questions, which you might, considering what we're doing right now, but there's a booth back there, and we'd love to kind of help answer questions and get to know you. So if you'd like to get to know us, we'd love that opportunity to go a little further in the conversation. But grateful for you guys trying something different and being with us for Go Church and what we're doing this weekend. We are in the middle of a series. That's kind of a good way to continue to focus on something, and that series happens to be called The Road. And all of us, in some way, shape, or another, are on a journey in life. And you're on an adventure, and it takes you to places you never thought you'd go. It's funny how things work because we were here last weekend. We were down where we usually meet, and that was just last week, and it felt like no other week for a lot of us. But I had the opportunity to go visit a friend in Mountain Home, Arkansas for the week, so I was gone Monday through Friday, and man, I feel like a lot happened. So it's been a while for me, in a sense, since I was here. And I was on a bit of a journey myself on the road that I was on. Man, I love this guy. Again, met him 14 years ago too, Eric Dwyer, phenomenal man of God. And so he's doing ministry in Mountain Home, Arkansas. And so I got to kind of see his world and what he's in the middle of. And it was a lot of fun to kind of catch up. And man, he's done some things and grown in a lot of ways. And then there's some stuff that I haven't. We used to play games all the time in the dorm. Me and Jamie played Uno like on our first date. And I'm not going to tell you who won, but it was bad. It was brutal. And then every time we played after, I still win. And so that was a fun game for me. Monopoly, there was a time when that was enjoyable, so I would play that game. But anytime after, that's a really long game. And so I played with my friends, Eric and Sarah, and we played 2 games of Monopoly in like an hour time frame. I don't know, they're insane. I don't know about you, but when you roll the dice and you've got to move, you pick up your piece and you kind of count to 8 to land and then go to jail because that's where you always land, and that's kind of how I play Monopoly. Like, they're so good at Monopoly, they'll roll like the 11 or the 7, and they just kind of know right where to put it. They don't even count. It's like, boop, boop. I'm like, oh, I'm in for it right now. And they're already like trading and mortgaging their property. Like, I totally forgot you even do that in Monopoly. And I just kind of was told that if you get the blue ones, man, Boardwalk and Park Place, that's how you win. Man, I don't know. I think McDonald's lied to me because I played through their little game, and I got those 2 because McDonald's said those are the best 2, and I was lied to because I lost, like, miserably. It was rough. Monopoly, or actually McDonald's usually doesn't tell you the truth all the time anyway, so it's a bad idea to learn how to play Monopoly through McDonald's. But man, it was really fun to see how different we are and how similar we are. They're in a ministry there. He's a youth pastor at a church, kind of our size, and doing a great job. I love this guy to death, and he's so kind about the way he shares information, but he's in a church where the leadership, it's honestly not very healthy. And I didn't tell him, but I'm ready for him to leave because I think he is not able to do what God has clearly put on his heart to do. They're there sharing some of his details there, and I told him this. I think he's doing more ministry at home than he is at the church because they're in the middle of foster care and adoption, and it's so powerful. And so they've got this beautiful little girl, and the adoption should go through. Actually, we might pray by the end. Next Friday is kind of their day where they'll know if they're going to keep this little girl or not. It's been 3.5 years, so I can't imagine that heartstring of like, hey, my 3-year-old kid might still be at home with us or might be taken from us come next Friday. So they're under a lot of stress and pursuing God with all of their heart. And I see this man so willing to do whatever God calls him to do, but then I see this situation where it's like, man, this church doesn't want to listen. And so instead of being complaining and being critical of the situation because he wasn't and I didn't want to feed into that, I just kind of learned this week about some of the things I don't want to do. And what I saw in that place is that they had been there for so long. The senior pastor was there for 20, 30-something years. And I don't think he saw what was happening. And I can relate in this way. I've got 3 kids, and I was gone for a couple days, and I got back, and my kids look way different to me. My youngest, 1-year-old, he looks like he's grown like a whole year in a week. Because when you get away, sometimes you get a chance to see things that you didn't see them before. And so one of the things that I learned from him that I need you to know is he seemed to not be open to any kind of criticism or wisdom from everyone that was there. Go Church, you need to know that I don't ever want to be in a place where you don't feel like you can share criticism about what we do as a church, about where we're going, because I think we are flawed people. And if I pretend like I've got it all figured out and don't ever take the time to look up and hear what God's saying through you, because we're a family, then I don't ever want to make that mistake. And so I think I got some of that wisdom from just watching how bad it can be when you're on that island of leadership all by yourself and you don't listen to each other. And so this has got to be a place where we do that, where we're okay to share what we feel. And that constructive criticism, I believe, is the way one of the way a church can grow the best. One of the other things too about this one real quick is that he wanted to know why their church wasn't growing. And I said to him with some great confidence, like I have it figured out. Well, the real key that I've been taught for many years now is developing leadership and how important it is to invest in other people, because it definitely can't just be one guy up on the stage. You're never really going to get that far. Now, I said that with confidence and felt like, yeah, no, this is how it works and this is what we're doing. And then I kind of had to get some humble pie a little bit and kind of think about that. I might have said that to him. I might think that and share it with some of my friends, but I hope that you guys know here that when you're a part of Go Church, we want to develop leadership. That, in fact, year 2020, we want to plant another church from this group. We will not go nearly as far as we could if we don't develop leaders in this place. So if you didn't hear it loud and clear, I needed to take this opportunity to tell you, in the same way that me and Jamie took the risk and the adventure to do what we're doing, you're in the same boat. If you come here and you're a part of this group of people, I believe, like I said before, that we are wise together. Now, we grow when we communicate with each other. And so there's a lot of leaders in this room. And in fact, I think being the best leader I could be means I have smart, awesome leaders around me all the time. And so listen, if you're unsure about how leadership works in this church, or where God wants you to move, or what he wants you to do, man, know that when you're here, we want to challenge you to grow into leadership, to challenge you to take that step, to take that risk, and whatever mean that might be for you, because I think that's what God would have us do. And I don't want to just say that to people as if that's what's happening and it's only in my mind. I want everyone that's here to know you have potential to lead in phenomenal ways. You have potential to do far greater things than you ever thought you were capable of beforehand. So know that that's who we are, that's who we're trying to be, and that's important to me very much. And so let me kind of jump into the road that we're on in the text. Man, this has kind of been a fun journey. We talked about the crucifixion and kind of that Passion Week of Jesus. And so what I wanted to go over, in fact, I'm going to read it. If you want to follow with me, open up your phone or however. There's lots of books. I don't know if they have a Bible section, but we're going to be in Luke chapter 24. I'm going to read to you verses 13 through 35. Again, a lot of the text we're in right now is we're kind of hearing, in a sense, the end of the story. This is in all four Gospels, but what happens here in Luke 24 is pretty awesome. So I'm going to be reading Luke 24, verses 13 through 35. This is on the road to Emmaus. Now, the same day, two of them were going to the village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they were talking with each other about everything that had happened. And as they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. But they were kept from recognizing him. They asked him, "What are you discussing?" He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along the road?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you only a visitor to Jerusalem, and do you not know the things that have happened in these last few days?" And he said, "What things?" "About Jesus of Nazareth." They replied, "that he was a prophet, a powerful in word and deed, and before God and all the people, the chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. We have hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what was more, it is the third day since all that took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early in the morning, but they didn't find his body. They came and told us that they'd seen a vision of angels and who had said he was alive. And then some of our companions went to the tomb and found just the same way, the women had said it was true, and they didn't see him. And he said to them, 'How foolish are you? And how slow of heart to believe that all the prophets had spoken, and did not the Christ have to suffer all these things and then enter into his glory?' And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he examined to them and talked and said these things, the scripture concerned about Jesus. And they approached the village to which they were going to stay, and Jesus was getting ready to go further, and they urged him strongly to stay. 'Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over,' so he went to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread and gave thanks and broke it, began to give to them, and then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. And then Jesus disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us? They got up and returned once to Jerusalem. They found the 11 and those with them as they assembled together and saying, it is true, the Lord has risen and appeared to Simon. Then the two of them told what had happened along the way and how Jesus was recognized by them and how he broke bread with them. Pretty cool story. I can't imagine what it would be like to be walking down the road with a friend and then Jesus appears to them. There's a couple of things I wanted to point out about this that stand out, that are pretty awesome stuff about this text. The first thing is just the nature of the context. The disciples had been in this environment where they knew who Jesus was. He was an important person, but he had died. And so they headed to Jerusalem was kind of walking backwards. They thought, well, we've been following him for a while, and we thought things were going to go a certain way. And now they kind of didn't, and so let's just go back. And so they discuss these things together. That to me is important because I find myself in life going through enough difficult things and I don't have someone next to me to discuss them with other people. We live in a world where there are enough things that will take your breath away, and I don't want us to miss the listen right in that first verse that they discussed this stuff and they worked out their struggle together. There are things in life that will not make sense all by yourself. You need to have in the road of life that you're walking down people right next to you where you can vent and say, you know what, this I don't understand. This is what happened, but it doesn't make sense to me, and I'm not sure what's going to happen next. And that conversation, that needs to happen. And so there will be things in your life that are confusing, that are overwhelming, and they will not make sense unless you are able to just kind of vent that and share that with someone along the road of life with you. Now that means for the things that are confusing, for the things that are overwhelming and depressing, and the things that would take the joy out of your life, that when you're overwhelmed with anything, I hope that you've got people in your life, you've got family, you've got relationships where you can walk along the road and you can share your heart and let that stuff off your chest, because, man, it's too hard to go through life with the things that burden you and not be able to share that with other people. So who are those people in your life? I hope you've got a couple where you can say whatever you need to say and not worry about what they might think about it, and got those real friends where you can communicate and share and go through these tough times together, because these guys, they're right in the middle of that. They went through something pretty difficult, and they didn't know what was going to happen. And again, this situation's crazy because they're walking along the road. Jesus doesn't tell them who he is first, and I don't know how that works, that it was some kind of ability that he had where they just didn't recognize that Jesus was right there, and so they're walking down the road together. And he's sharing with them the scriptures, and he kind of says, man, you fools, like the text said, the stuff that you studied your whole life, that he was going to die and come back on the third day, and all this was going to happen, and didn't you guys know that this is what the scripture said? And so they're kind of like, well, we need to think about this a little bit more, and they have this conversation, and yeah, that's awesome. I loved it. Sorry. Good job. No, it was so funny because I'm looking out and talking, and I see a bunch of eyes kind of like, oh yeah, no, that's good. What is he doing? Oh yeah. Oh, right here, yeah. That's awesome. Good job. Love it. So they were going down this adventure. He shows up next to them, shares the scripture with them, and then they're like, hey, don't go any further. This is a good conversation. In fact, you should stay with us tonight. Come be a part of what we're doing. There's a lot to be said about that as well. They share the meal together. They have communion that you and I just took, and at that moment, Jesus reveals himself to them. They're like, what? That's him. And then he disappears. I'm not sure all of why Jesus did it that way, why he would reveal himself to them during communion, and why he would leave immediately right after. But there are some things that I felt and I can see in the text that continues to come up about Jesus, especially in the resurrection. And so we started talking about this conversation that we're on this road together in life. If there's any destination, it would be Jesus. If there's anywhere that you go in life that he's worth moving towards. There's no other better destination, no other better reason to move forward than to follow him where he leads you. But what this shows me a little bit is that the resurrection, in a sense, is kind of the proof at the end of the story. Like, hey, all this happened. He was crucified. He shared these things. He changed the world. And it all actually happened. And here's why. Boom, the resurrection. And so in this text and a lot of others, he reveals himself to these eyewitnesses, to these disciples, and so that's a pretty encouraging proof that Jesus is who he says he was. But I don't think that Jesus reveals himself to these people because he's wanting proof of his accounts. I think part of what I see in the text is that Jesus, he likes to be with his friends. We see him later with Peter and a couple other people. He's going to hang out and have a meal together. And the relationship he has with the disciples, the relationship he has with you, that's pretty valuable to him. And so I don't know if it was just to make a point to say, yeah, I told you I was going to resurrect, like I said. I don't know that he needed to do that to prove to the world, because he wasn't trying to do that. I think he did what he needed to do, and he spent a little bit extra time because he loves being with his people. And so what I take away from that in this journey that we're on and the life that God's got for us, he desires to spend time with you. He wants to be in a relationship with you. I did. I had a great time on this trip for the week that I was away. Part of it was I wanted to see my friend that I hadn't seen in a while, and I think I kind of needed that breath of fresh air and that break. A lot was happening for him in Arkansas, as I kind of told you a little bit. There was more stress than I was prepared to walk into. I think I was doing a little bit more ministry there than vacation, and that was really, really good. But one of the things I took away from my trip is that I foolishly try all the time to fill myself up with other things. So I might be overwhelmed and stressed, and I might have burdens on my journey in life, and I'll try and fill them up with a video game or with a movie or reading a book or taking a walk or my kids or my wife. But there is nothing that fills my heart like time with Jesus. And here's the thing, I know that. I know that nothing satisfies our soul like our time with him, and yet I still choose other things to try and fill myself up. I took a trip to Arkansas. I flew and I had a great time, but it didn't do what I wanted it to do because I was looking in the wrong place to be fulfilled anyway. You guys are on an adventure, and whatever God's got called for you, it's going to be difficult at times, as you know. It's going to be overwhelming a lot of the time. But don't make the mistake that I often do and try and fill myself up with things that do not satisfy. There's only one person, and that one person, he wants to have that relationship with you. He knows that you need that, and so he's there for you. And he desires to have that time with you. And so as you're figuring out the journey of life and the road that God has called you to, man, don't go anywhere without that relationship, without that connection to him, because he gives you the strength that you need. You will only be satisfied. Your soul will only be filled because of his presence. So don't make the mistake I did and trying other things to fill up your heart, because that relationship, that's what really fills you up. Because life, especially in ministry, you will have opportunity all over the place to pour your heart out and love on people, and that's what we've been called to do. So with that being said, man, as you do ministry and you love on other people, you have to have that source to fill you up. But here's what's crazy about the text too. He shows that he wants to be with us, and that relationship is so very valuable. But and I didn't know this actually until I was talking to my friend about it during the week that I was gone. But a crazy thing happens in this text that I still truly cannot wrap my mind around. And so right at the end of the story here in verse 32, Jesus came to eat, they had communion, they recognized who Jesus was, and then he disappeared at that moment, verse 31, and then verse 32. They asked each other, were not our hearts burning within us while he talked to us on the road and opened up the scripture to us? What that seems to imply to me is that they have this meal, they see the resurrected Jesus, he disappears, and then what they want to talk about is how much their heart was set on fire because of the scripture. So resurrected Jesus is at your house, and he disappears, and the first thing you want to talk about is how, man, when you were reading the Bible, that set your heart on fire, that burned the fire within us. That blows me away. And at the same time, I think I see where they're coming from, because it is through the Word that we get to know who Jesus is. It is through the Word that gives us the real fire. And here's what I've seen. You truly know someone, not when you see them, but when you have a conversation with them. A couple of you guys, it's your first time here this weekend, and it's great to get a chance to meet you, but if I only see you walk by and just kind of nod or even get that far, I don't know that I would feel comfortable to say that I met you, that I know who you are. But if I said, hello, my name's Jacob, and you told me your name, and we got to kind of share, when we have that conversation, then I feel appropriate to say, you know what, yeah, I know who they are. I mean, not very well, but we've met. Now, if we really get to talk and go have lunch and share a couple of years of life together, talking, then I feel like I really know who you are. But that knowing you, that doesn't happen until we actually have the conversation. And so God is the same way. There are a lot of people where they might have seen him from a distance, and they might think they know who he is and that they know how he works. But until you have that conversation, until you've met him through words, you don't really know who he is. This is how you meet him. He has clearly laid out all of what he wants us to know through the words. And so if you want to get to know God, then you've got to get to know the word. And the word in and of itself is quite a powerful thing. I love the analogy that the word is like the ocean. That there are some places that are so shallow that even our young kids can go play in the water and get some enjoyment out of the process. And yet at the very same time, even the best divers cannot get to the very bottom of this thing. And so the Bible is there for all of us to enjoy and find new things about our life. And with that being said, it's been called an owner's manual, a survival guide. We have this journey that we're on. You're going somewhere in life. And if you want to do that and not break down on the side of the road and not have issues with how things work, man, this manual will tell you how to live your life. But if you're like me, I keep thinking, I don't need the instructions. I can figure this out on my own. I can fill myself up the way I think I need to. And then I find myself empty again. This is the only way that I will be filled. This is the only way that I will be full. And this is the only way that my heart will be set on fire. And again, it still blows my mind that they saw the resurrected Jesus, but it was the text. It was the way they had this conversation with Jesus, and it was like, oh, that's right. Like I'd heard some of this before, but when you said it and we talked about it, man, that's when it really clicked. And by no surprise, and I'm so grateful to see the way God works, is that a core value of who we are, as we prayed and thought about what Go Church was going to be and what we were going to do, we said right off the bat, first thing, we will be driven by the gospel, because we cannot do this by any other means. And I remember for me, and this kind of a tangent, that kind of like a life verse for me, for the longest time, 1 Timothy 4:12, that don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example to believers. That was perfect for me when I was in Bible college, and I was a 17-year-old kid and everyone was older. But then I became a youth pastor, and I wasn't the youngest kid in the room anymore. And so set an example to believers, that was something that I lived with, but I wasn't the young guy anymore. Now, the coolest thing for me is I just kind of kept reading the text. And in 1 Timothy 4, 13, 14, 15, it says, know the doctrine. Man, hide that in your heart so that you don't sin against God, and it'll save yourself and your hearers, but guard that closely. And I had lots of people encourage me, Jake, as you guys go out to pursue this church plant, there's the entrepreneur spirit, and there's the budget and all the things that churches might want to have, but if you don't have the scripture, if you're not driven by the gospel, you will fall on your face so quick. And so that is so important to me. And so that is so important to this church. And in fact, that's kind of a bit of a teaser, I guess, where we're going to go into the fall is if you don't know the Bible or how to use the Bible or how to be driven by the scriptures, that's what we're going to do. I feel like that is so important that we know this book together, because when we do, that gives us perfect peace. That gives us clarity, because these guys walked along the road, they had the conversation together. They were figuring out some stuff, but they were still confused. Not until the scripture was clarified to them did things make sense in their life. And so we're the same way. I want you to have family, I want you to have friends, and you need to be able to talk life out. But this is the only thing that's really going to clarify those questions and give you hope and give you purpose, and will really change your heart and set it on fire as you meet the risen Lord. But as this book is different than all the other ones in this library, you might pick up some of these and they might be entertaining. They might bring you down memory lane because you're reading when you're younger, but this is the only one where when you read it, it reads you back. And it tells you what it thinks about your life. And we like to get our tools and magnifying glass and pick it apart and go verse by verse and study this book, because every time you read it, it just changes our mind. But this one, when you open it up, it's going to look at you with a magnifying glass. And it's going to pick you apart piece by piece. And it's going to tell you the things that you need to change about your life. And so it will set you on fire, but it's not always going to feel as good in the moment. And it will challenge you to live life that you didn't expect. And so we're on a journey together. Life has got an adventure for you. And me and Jamie and a lot of us, we've decided to let Go Church be where we're moving forward, and we're listening to him. And we got places we're getting ready to go in the fall. And again, my time away was so special for me, because my heart grew fonder. I'm so grateful for the willingness in this place that you guys walked in here with no AC and said, bring it on. I don't think I heard a single one of you complain, because it's not about that. It's about something else. It's about something more. And so we're following this guy together. And as we do that, as we pursue that, you will only be better off when you know the word more and you have that relationship with him. With that being said, I kind of feel like there's a twofold or kind of a part I really want to talk about. The text, being honest with you, the text really doesn't go to the point I'm about to make, but I feel like it's what I want to say. The relationship that we have with Jesus, knowing him through Scripture, is obviously incredibly important. But there's that relationship side of it where he gets to share, and then there's the side where we get to share. That, if I could say anything, would be our prayer life. And so I want to talk about prayer, and I want to pray with you guys, because I think if we're going to listen to what he has for us, then we need to be a church that prays. I would love for Go Church to be known as the church that prays in Spring Hill, man. That would be phenomenal. And so as a man of God, I know if I'm not praying, I'm not going to be where I need to be. And God has big plans for us if we would be those kind of people. Now, I know a little bit about prayer to know that there are times where he answers me right away with a yes, but they're seldom, and they're far and few between. There are a lot of times where it's kind of a slow, he doesn't give me the answer right away. And so I have to look back on my prayers from months ago, from weeks ago, and years ago, and then it's like, oh, that's right. He did answer that. I remember now. And other times it's a no. It's a big, sorry, you're looking in the wrong direction. And so it's a relationship in and of itself. And so we're learning to have that relationship with Jesus, and through our prayer life, figuring out what he wants us to do. But I know this. In whatever road I'm traveling down with my family, whatever road you're going down in this church, we're not going to go anywhere nearly as powerful and as far as we could if we're not praying to God, if we're not spending some time on our knees saying, okay, man, guide my path, please, because I don't want to do this without you. And so speak to me through your word. Tell me what you want me to know. Tell me about yourself as I see the mountains and the nature that you've given me. We see God through nature. God, speak to me through the person sitting next to me, because when we share together, you're with us. And I know you speak there, but God, I know you speak through the Scriptures, so speak to my heart, God. And then we spend some time in prayer, man. You usher up just unload. Let him hear, let him know what's going on. And when you do that, I think you open up the door for that journey to start. But not until you do that first step. Whatever God wants to do through you, if you're not willing to open up your heart and pray about it, I don't think you're going to get that far. And I don't think this church will either. And so, yeah, with intentionality, with purpose, I want to pray with you. In fact, kind of the way we've done it a little bit before, and I know we're doing good on time, there's going to be a closing song, but I want to end with prayer. There's going to be a couple things up on the screen, and so what I want you to do, get into groups of 3 to 5. I'm going to pray for you, and then get into groups, whatever size you want to, people that you know, people that you don't. When you pray together, man, you get to know someone when you pray together. And we are stronger when we pray together. And so I want to spend some time doing that. The 3 things up on the screen is going to be that you would pray that we would be driven by the gospel, because this is a lot of stuff. This is complicated. This is overwhelming. But I don't want to be the church that missed this and just kind of kept running, because I think, unfortunately, it's easier than you think to be a church that isn't running forward with this. And so I want to make sure that's what we do. So selfishly, it might be, but would you please pray that this church will be driven by the gospel, and that you would be as well. And then, again, I see a powerful fall coming up. I see some good things coming, and I'm excited, and I wish I could share with you all the stuff that I've been processing through, but I know it won't mean anything unless we're praying. And then maybe most importantly, would you please pray for each other? Just if you've got prayer requests and you're comfortable to share that with the people around you, I would love that. And this is a little bit selfish, but my friend Eric and Sarah up in Arkansas, this little girl, next Friday on the 14th, they'll know, or there's a court date, and the judge will make a decision if they're going to get to keep their daughter or not. And so I would love for you to pray for my friends Eric and Sarah that next Friday would be a good day for them, because I can't even imagine what that would be like. But I believe in the power of prayer and what you guys do together, because it isn't just my voice. I would love to end the service where it's our voices together and not just mine. So let me pray and then break into groups and go over those things, and then we'll close with a song, all right? And go get some more AC somewhere, hopefully. All right, let me pray. God, I love you like crazy. I thank you for this awesome group of people and their willingness to put up with some of this. And I know that that's a sign of something deeper. They put up with a lot in life, and they look to you still. So I pray, God, for clarity as they seek your will. Pray, God, that they would continue to find you in the distractions and the busyness, in the pain and in the joy, because there is no other voice that we want to listen to, no other path that we want to follow than the one you set us on. So God, help us please to see that. Now, I selfishly would want everyone's path to be the same as mine, and Go Church could do all this together, but I know you've got a bigger kingdom, and some of us in this room right now, our paths, they're not meant to stay together, and that's okay, because you're a big God, and you've got journeys for all of us to go down. So I pray for bravery. I pray for boldness. I pray, God, that you would speak into our life and that we would go and do the things that you called us and created us for, that we would take the risk and our heart would be set afire through our prayers and through our time with you in the Word, and we would listen to you as you lead our lives in incredible places that we have never been before, God. I pray to be with this church. I pray we wouldn't miss your message of hope and challenge and boldness, that we would go into all the places and different cafeterias and different media centers and